As I've said before, I'm not actually a YouTuber, so this YouTube channel has whatever I feel like talking about. So I'm really sorry if you've subscribed to this channel because you came here for book reviews or how to use your Swedish Ankarsrum stand mixer, or you wanted to listen to something about Maxton Hall. Like I said, whatever crosses my mind is what I post about on this channel. So this video is about the very exciting topic of the court of public opinion versus the legal system and why we have due process. In relation to the court of public opinion and instant judgment, imagine being put on trial, not in a courtroom, not in front of an impartial judge, but in the chaotic, ruthless court of public opinion, where evidence is optional, emotions run high, and verdicts are instant and irreversible. Many people see public opinion justice as a way for the powerless to hold the powerful accountable, a modern David versus Goliath battle. But what happens when public opinion trials turn into chaotic, inconsistent, and often unfair verdicts? Two recent, in fact current, cases highlight the dangers of social media-driven justice. Both of these cases are being tried in the court of public opinion before any legal process has played out or even begun in one case. Blake Lively against Justine Baldoni. On the 20th of December 2024, actress Blake Lively filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department against her It Ends With Us co-star and director, Justine Baldoni, alleging sexual harassment and retaliation on set. Lively claimed that Baldoni engaged in inappropriate behavior, including improvising unwanted physical intimacy during filming. She also alleged that Baldoni hired a crisis management team to discredit Lively's reputation through coordinated media efforts. Lively is alleged to have shared her claim with the New York Times, which then amplified her claims. On 31 December 2024, Lively filed a suit in the New York federal court naming Baldoni, Wayfarer, and PR representatives Melissa Nathan and Jennifer Abel for subjecting her to further retaliation and attacks after she participated in the New York Times story. Public opinion was very much against the lesser-known Baldoni, whose career seemed doomed. On 16 January 2025, Baldoni filed a countersuit against Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Since then, there have been a lot of developments, documents filed, documents leaked, which I do not intend to go into detail about. Justine Baldoni's legal team and PR strategy has, for the most part, successfully pushed back against the initial narrative, but this is an uncommon outcome in high-profile public disputes. In any case, the conflict has since escalated into a highly public, contentious, and multifaceted legal battle, unfolding both in the court of public opinion and across multiple legal jurisdictions in the US, including California and New York, with related proceedings also emerging in Texas at the time of this video. Whether or not any of the parties will emerge from this unscathed is yet to be determined. It is highly unlikely, though. In relation to the second case, although it's a much smaller matter, it's a case that demonstrates how quickly things can happen online. And this relates to allegations by YouTuber Naomi King against prominent booktuber Daniel Greene. On 12 February 2025, YouTuber Naomi King accused fellow content creator Daniel Greene of sexual assault in a public video. No legal claim was filed. King detailed the alleged incident and shared that King had received a cease and desist letter from Greene that had threatened them for legal action for defamation and harassment. The allegations spread across social media platforms within a space of 24 hours, leading to very polarized responses from the community. Daniel Greene was arguably the most high-profile booktuber that could be found on YouTube and had many connections with high-profile authors. As a result, many fellow booktubers immediately condemned Daniel Greene in public statements. His subscriber numbers plummeted immediately, impacting his Patreon, his novels, and a live Kickstarter campaign. On 13 February 2025, Greene denied the accusations in a subsequent video. Following a second video released by Naomi King on 16 February 2025, which provided more information, public opinion shifted again. Although many continued to advocate believing the victim, a significant portion of the audience reversed their stance. Some booktubers who previously condemned Greene either removed or delisted their videos or fell silent. What do these two cases have in common? Public sentiment shifted quickly in both cases, with people choosing sides based on limited, one-sided information, and in many cases they moved back and forth. The two cases illustrated the power and volatility of public opinion, which can irreversibly damage reputations, regardless of any formal legal outcome. In my view, this is exactly the problem with the court of public opinion. It operates on emotion, selective information, and social media narratives rather than due process, impartiality, and the structured examination of evidence. In both cases, initial public reactions were swift and very extreme, and then as more information or counterclaims surfaced, people either doubled down on their stance or they completely flipped in their judgment. So to me, it begs the question, why do we have a legal system? And why does it matter that justice is served through legal means rather than mob justice? The fundamental issue is that public opinion trials do not separate judge, jury, and executioner. In a real court, a judge ensures fairness and lawfulness. A jury examines the evidence. The execution of the sentence only happens after due process. In a public opinion trial, the same people act as all three, often based on an incomplete story. In the court of public opinion, there is no due process. Unlike an actual legal system where evidence is gathered, weighed, and tested by impartial entities, public opinion is shaped by sound bites, screenshots, and commentary, none of which have to meet any burden of proof. There are no rules of evidence or evidence requirements. There are no thorough investigations. Conclusions are formed based on emotional reactions, headlines, and viral social media posts. In the court of public opinion, there are irreversible consequences. Lives, careers, and reputations can be ruined before any facts are fully examined. A single accusation, true or not, can completely derail a person's career and personal life. By the time legal proceedings even begin, if they do at all, irreversible damage may already have been done. And if an accusation turns out to be untrue or misleading, the retraction or clarification never gets the same traction that the original accusation did. The other issue is bias and emotional reactions. People jump to conclusions and form their opinions based on pre-existing biases, whether gender, celebrity status, past behavior, political leanings, social narratives, viral content, how someone seems to them, rather than evaluating facts objectively. The confirmation bias is that if a person seems guilty or has a certain reputation, many people will assume the worst about them. Finally, I think that mob justice is merciless when you have social media as a battleground. Online discourse is not about fairness. It is about outrage, virality, and taking sides with controversy shaping decisions rather than fairness or truth. As I mentioned before, unlike a courtroom where a judge or jury ultimately makes a decision based on all available evidence, the internet's judgment is fragmented, chaotic, and constantly shifting. Outrage spreads much faster than truth does, and algorithms push the most extreme takes, not the most balanced or factual ones. And as I mentioned above, the retractions or corrections rarely go viral in the same way. We need to go back to the original purpose of the legal system. Its purpose is to be a check on human instinct. There are arguments out there about the fact that it is there to reinforce religious systems and all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, the law and the legal systems that are in place exist to make us behave in a better way, given that we have to coexist with others. The fundamental purpose of its existence is precisely because humans are emotional and biased. A legal system aims to ensure fairness, impartiality, and due process before determining guilt or liability. In early societies, justice was personal. Victims and their families often sought disproportionate punishment. An angry and grief-stricken person always wants maximum punishment. A theft might be punished with execution, sexual assault with mob retaliation. The problem with vigilante justice is that there are no standards of fairness. There's no verification of facts, and it initiates an endless cycle of retaliation. One act of revenge would lead to another, escalating into chaos and feuds. Thus, the legal system was created to prevent this. It was designed to take justice out of the hands of the emotionally involved. It forced deliberation, examination of evidence, and proportional punishment. It introduced the idea that justice must be impartial and not dictated by personal rage. And there are some basic principles that are common to the UK, US, and Australian legal systems. I know Europe has a different system, and I really can't speak to that, but you will see that even with the European system, which has different principles, there are still some underlying principles that are similar. So in criminal cases, the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt because the stakes, prison, execution, are so high. It's premised on the original principle from William Blackstone's ratio, which is that it is better than 10 guilty persons escape than that one innocent suffer. Now that sucks for innocent people in society that may not want guilty people walking amongst them, but it explains why the criminal justice system is the way it is. And I realise that this is sounding a lot like The Way of Kings and Dalinar speaking with Noah Dawn, but that's a digression. In civil cases, the burden is on the balance of probabilities rather than beyond a reasonable doubt. This is because the stakes, being money, contracts, and disputes, are considered lower. Juries and judges are meant to be impartial. If the system works correctly, and I will go into the fact that it doesn't always work correctly, but if it works the way it's supposed to, they are supposed to have no personal stake, bias, and consider both sides fairly. This is because they're not intimately involved in this, they are not making decisions based on emotion and anger. It is very arm's length. The other basic principle of our legal system is that it is an evidence-based process. Both parties must present evidence and argue their case. It is determined on the basis of that evidence and their advocates being their legal advisors, rather than emotional or popular opinion. So, in terms of the rise of social media justice, this has made me wonder whether we have reverted. Social media fuels instant outrage and viral misinformation. The scandal breaks, outrage explodes, reputations are ruined before facts emerge, and by the time the courts are able to act, the damage is already done. I feel like we have reverted to mob justice. The same emotional, impulsive judgments from history are now digital, global, and spread in seconds. Millions of strangers suddenly become involved in cases that they know very little about. People are judging others based on headlines, viral tweets, or 30-second clips without full context. Social media has made news cycles faster than our legal system can keep up with. I feel a discomfort as we seem to be returning to emotional, impulsive, and punitive justice. We are seeing online witch hunts. And in the old days, where justice was local, the scale of the witch hunt is much bigger now. Controversially, I also have to flag the believe the victim narrative and the legal system. In recent years, the phrase believe the victim has gained traction in cases of sexual misconduct and abuse. Although its intent is to encourage listening to and supporting victims who may otherwise be ignored, for me, it poses challenges when you view it through the lens of the legal process. In other words, the legal principle of due process. The legal system is designed to presume innocence until proven guilty. We are supposed to weigh evidence fairly for both the accuser and the accused. We are to allow cross-examination and legal scrutiny. A blind belief in an accusation without due process can lead to a wrongful conviction and ruin lives. I feel like a balanced approach is necessary, one that supports victims while maintaining fairness. The believe the victim principle creates a direct conflict with the legal principles of due process that I mentioned above, such as the burden of proof, being the accuser must provide evidence to substantiate their claims. Due process, being that both sides should have an opportunity to present their case. Cross-examination, a fundamental part of determining credibility. Public pressure to believe the victim has in some cases exacerbated and led to snap judgments, rushed firings, and career-destroying consequences before any investigation is completed, and in some cases, commenced. Another area that I would like to discuss in the legal system versus the court of public opinion is precedent versus chaos. The legal systems in the UK, US, and Australia follow principles of stare decisis, or precedent. This is where judges base rulings on previous cases for consistency, fairness, and predictability. They're supposed to base their rulings on these previous cases unless there is a compelling reason to overturn or distinguish the earlier cases. This ensures consistency, predictability, and fairness so that similar cases are treated alike. The court of public opinion has no such structure. The rules change based on who is accused, their popularity, and their PR strategy. In terms of a handful of examples of inconsistency in public opinion justice, think about Roman Polanski, Woody Allen, Harvey Weinstein, James Gunn, Kevin Hart, Armie Hammer, Will Smith. They have all had different outcomes due to public sentiment, industry backing, and PR efforts. Roman Polanski has admitted to unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor, but he continues to receive industry support because of his films. Woody Allen, allegations of misconduct persist, yet his steady artistic output has insulated him. Someone like Harvey Weinstein, because he has no public goodwill or creative output to redeem himself, he will probably never be able to come back. James Gunn was initially cancelled over past offensive tweets, but rehired after a strong fan and industry pushback. Someone like Kevin Hart lost an Oscars hosting gig over resurfaced homophobic tweets, but has rebuilt his career through public apologies and continued work. There are rumours that someone like Armie Hammer is attempting a comeback after sexual abuse allegations. Will Smith faced intense public scrutiny after slapping Chris Rock at the 2022 Oscars. He's another person who's trying to rebuild his career through public apologies. There are very different outcomes depending on who your allies are when you go through the court of public opinion. So as I've mentioned above, the legal system applies structured reasoning and precedent to ensure fairness, while public opinion is driven by emotion, bias, and popular support. It is based on personal feelings, industry support, profit motives. Now, there are, of course, shortcomings of the legal system. Everybody knows this, and that is probably why the court of public opinion takes place. We know that legal cases are slow and expensive. They take too long. Justice delayed can feel like justice denied. The wealthy have the luxury of dragging cases out, and the poor may struggle for legal representation or even the ability to participate in the legal process because they don't have the funds to do it, to take the time out of their working life, to engage good lawyers, that sort of thing. Even though the legal process is supposed to be impartial, it is very much the case that some individuals are able to use power, status, money connections, or media influence to sway cases. Depending on who you are, the way the legal system treats you can be quite different. So I'm not going to say that it is a perfect system. There is a massive burden on victims. Testifying can be very traumatic, especially in sensitive cases like sexual assault. And because of the protections on the accused, it is very much the case that the person who is making an accusation has the burden of proving things, and so therefore the legal process is going to be a lot harder on them in many ways. Our current legal system also has a lot of loopholes and bureaucracy. Some cases get lost in procedural delays, bogged down in technicalities rather than truths, and it is unfortunately very much the case that the only winners are probably the lawyers because they're able to charge extremely high legal fees, and the more complex and the more bogged down it gets from a fee perspective, the better it is for them. Nonetheless, unlike social media trials, the legal system does still require both sides to be heard, and I still feel that it is the best structure to ensure fairness, proportional punishment, and actual justice. The legal system, while definitely not perfect, exists to counterbalance our worst instincts. It prioritizes fairness over speed. It acknowledges that it is dangerous to rush to judgment based on incomplete information, especially when people's lives and reputations are at stake. It has many, many flaws, but I think mob justice is far worse. I feel like public opinion trials are a dangerous step backward, because even though they are fast, justice probably is supposed to be a little bit slower and benefit from a cooler head. So my final takeaway is that we live in a world where someone can be cancelled in minutes, but redemption takes years if it ever happens at all. So I'm thinking when I look at all of these, before we decide someone's fate online, we should be asking ourselves, Is this justice, or is this just another version of the mob and the witch hunt? So while it may be a stretch to ask people to withhold judgment until a formal legal outcome has been reached, I can at least urge people to recognise their own biases and withhold judgment until more evidence has been released.